Hey folks, it's Chris with the Human Project Podcast. We're continuing our series in Christianese phrases. The one we're going to explore today is let go and let God. Where is that helpful? Where is that not helpful? What do we mean when we say that? Are we trying to just paper over something? And where is there truth in that? Take a listen to this episode as we explore that and dive into letting go and letting God. Hello, Mark.
Hey there, Chris.
How's it going?
It's pretty good. Yeah, I'm hanging on. How about you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I'm just letting go and letting God.
So instead of hanging on, you're letting go, huh?
Yeah.
Great.
Depending
Teach
on
me your ways.
Depending on the circumstance, one could be much smarter than the other. Depending on what you're hanging on to.
Aha.
And where you're going to fall if you let go.
Wow.
What's going to happen if you let go?
I think we've got the episode done. That was a short episode.
All right. Thanks for tuning in today. But no, we're exploring these Christianese phrases. And there's this other common one that comes up of, you just need to let go and let God. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about the biblical aspect of it, whether it's found in the Bible, whether the pattern's biblical, where this one's probably going to be a little bit more nuanced than I'll be praying for you.
Yeah.
And talk about where this is helpful, where it's not helpful, and then what might be a better replacement for this. So I think I'm not going to jump on your toes. I'm not going to step on your toes here by saying, I think I'm a more carefree person than you are.
I think that would be fair. I'm not going to argue.
So letting go and letting God. Mm-hmm. To me, the history, the reminder of that is like, hey, I'm not in control. God is in control, which will be a whole other episode. So let's not like let's there.
Not open that can of worms, right?
Yeah. Because that's a great thing to explore.
Yeah.
Like what that means just practically for us is wonderful. But let go and let God. I tend to hold on to things. Letting go means that I am acknowledging I can't control everything. And God in this wonderful, beautiful mystery somehow works these things together. And my part is faithfulness, obedience. We've talked about that in past episodes.
Yeah, right.
So I want to explore, where do we see this, or do we see this in the Bible?
Yeah, I actually just did a search right before we started this episode because I just kind of wanted to know, generally speaking, what the internet thought the Bible's support for it was. I found an interesting, I don't even know what translation it is. I'm assuming it's something toward the message. It certainly is not a attempt at any sort of literal translation. So it's not your typical NIV and NASB, any kind of thing like that. That translated something in Ephesians as let go and let God, which I don't know why they're getting that out of the verse. So I'm just going to set that one aside as a humorous. So I think best possible intent would be something really close to Proverbs 3:5. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him and he will make your paths straight. Right? I'm not going to be able to understand it. Mm-hmm. I need to rely on him. I need to trust in him. I need to open my hands and let go of this thing because he's got this. He understands the situation. I don't understand it. And I want to follow him in that. And I think that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. Very difficult for some of us to do, many of us to do. And it reminds me of what we talk about in class oftentimes as a home zone, throne zone kind of challenge, right? There are things that are my responsibility. What is it that I am supposed to be making decisions about and deciding about? But there's so much outside of that I often try and grab a hold of that is not my responsibility. Yeah. The weather, the traffic, other people's opinions. I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that fall into that category. Yeah. What's going to happen in the future? I mean, that is most of the time how we interpret this verse out of Proverbs. Yeah. If I try and hold on to that tightly and make sure that this thing happens, if it's not just based on my decisions, that's actually not going to help me at all. Yeah. And I need to, ideally, in health, let go of that and trust in God.
Yeah. So the idea, the principle behind it of letting go and letting God is biblical, but there's not a direct correlation with the phrase let go and let God.
My way of looking at it, you're not going to find a Bible verse that says let go and let God.
Yeah. Right. I think there are patterns of stories of God working with people to put them in a situation that they're out of control.
Yes.
And they're completely leaning in, trusting. Like, I think of trust as putting your faith or you're leaning onto something. Mm-hmm. So the example that comes to mind is Gideon. When the Midianites They were facing off against the Midianites. So Gideon had this army of tens of thousands of people, and God whittled it down to 300. It was the original 300 back before the Gerard Butler 300.
Okay.
But as a result of that, like that wasn't even good enough to just say it's completely out of Gideon's hands. God didn't give them weapons. They used torches and pots. And somehow God beat the army that was significantly larger than them. So I think like God's intentionally pulling people out of their comfort zones and saying like, I am God. I am here. I am in control of this.
Yeah.
So I think we can see pattern after pattern after pattern of that in the Bible.
Yes.
But I want to talk about how do we use this phrase? And I think it's very similar to the I'll be praying for you.
Sure.
As it's a comfort thing and the dark side of it. So let's talk before we get to the dark side.
Yeah.
Let's talk about where this is positive.
Right.
Where this is more of an exhortation, like a calling, a speaking into. That's another Christianese phrase.
Yeah. Write that one down.
Got it.
I think it's always an appropriate challenge for ourselves to trust God, to seek him, to rely on him, and not just our own understanding. And that challenge is one that I think as humans in the state that we're in, we're going to continually need to be reminded of that and remind ourselves of that and get called back to that, because we're going to tend to want to trust ourselves or other people.
Yeah.
So I think that is a very healthy challenge for us to say, I want to challenge myself to let go of what I think needs to be done here and let God reveal stuff to me about what he wants in this situation.
That's a good call out, because I think what's different with this one versus the I'll be praying for you is this is one we can say to ourselves, to not just to somebody else. So if it's a reminder to ourselves, we know the intent of that for ourselves. And I think the tendency there is to be much more healthy than what it can be for other people.
Right.
But at the same time, like I think it's really easy to use it as an excuse of, well, I don't really have any say in this, and absolve ourselves of responsibility. We can go way too far and just like completely hands off the wheel. Like I don't have to take any action or do anything. But it's this tension, this balance between what's faithfulness and what is responsibility. We've talked ad nauseum about that.
Please go listen to that episode. There's a whole rich area right there that we are still living out every day to learn what that balance is. Yeah.
So I think in that aspect, it can be really helpful for ourselves. And it sometimes is a beautiful reminder to other people, like, hey, I think you're trying to hold on to this way too tightly. Like you're worrying about things that are not in your control. Yeah. And that might be a more helpful response. We can circle back to that after we talk about the negative side of it. I think on the negative side, an easy one is very similar of just like just blanket advice. Yeah. Like, oh, you just need to let go and let God. That's
going to solve it if I just say that phrase to the person, right? They're just going, oh, you know what? You're right. I should just let go of this. Okay, all good.
It's very much that bumper sticker. Yeah. 99.9% confident there is a bumper sticker that says that.
Let go and let God.
Yeah. Literally a bumper sticker.
And the sales for it just went up because of this podcast.
No, that's not. In fact, if you're interested in one of those bumper stickers, you can click our affiliate link. But I don't really see bumper stickers as much anymore.
No, that's true.
But it very much is that.
It's probably a phone case now.
That's probably true. Our phone cases, the new bumper stickers.
Whoa.
Deep revelations had on the Human Project podcast. But it's very much one of those, like, I'm not comfortable. I'm just going to say this and then walk away. Yeah. I think that's the big negative side of it.
Right.
What else do you see as the negative side?
I think continuing that line of thought, it's very, it's non-relational. It's not connective to say that either. It's actually disconnective to say that kind of thing. It's like shoving somebody away. Like, you need to go deal with this with God. Like, it can be taken that way, at least, of like, as soon as you get that figured out and you let go of it, then we can talk.
I was going to say, even that can be healthy though. What that specific part you said of you and God need to go deal with this.
Yeah.
Like that can very much be true. But you turned it around at the end of like, then we can talk, like, instead of like, let's pray together right now.
Right.
Let's figure this out.
Let's work on this. Absolutely.
So what are some more helpful ways that we can phrase this?
Well, I think before we even get to rephrasing it, it's a callback to what would be a great stance to have in the midst of this. Because if somebody is, and I speak as one who does deal with this on a regular basis, holding on to a lot of things very tightly, having somebody say to me, just let go of that. Just let go and let God. Like, why are you holding on to that?
Believe me, I've tried. It does not work.
It does not work.
Hands grab tighter.
You're like, what are you talking about? So having that declared to me actually does not help in that most of those circumstances for me, again, when I'm dealing with that. It's somebody with me in that. Much like we talked about with the last phrase of I'll pray for you. It's much better to have someone come alongside me in the midst of my anxiety or my worry or whatever that is that I'm dealing with at that point in that circumstance. Be with me in it as the first step.
Yeah.
Connect first.
Yeah.
Just go back to connection.
Yeah, I think that's a really good call out. Just going back to connection first instead of like, that's your own problem, go deal with it. Sometimes, like I said, that is good exhortation. Yeah. Sometimes that is necessary. I have not enjoyed it when that's been said to me in the past, but it's also been extremely helpful. Like, oh, this is something I need to process and do. Yeah. It doesn't always have to be done in community, but if you have that community of people that you can share with, you can get vulnerable with, like that's wonderful to do in community.
Yeah.
On the side of what to replace this with, there's this mental model I use a lot. I think Stephen Covey popularized it, but I think it's been around for quite a bit. It's talking about circles of control, circles of influence, circles of acceptance. I think we've talked about this in a past episode as well. Something that might be helpful is to ask people like, what about this is your responsibility? What's your control? What are you hoping to achieve out of this? More like asking questions, which I know we tend to poo-poo quite a bit, but asking questions in a way of helping them explore. Like more of like a coaching stance is the terminology we would use of thinking that they have some understanding of an answer, but allowing them to take ownership of that without needing to jump in and either just completely absolve ourselves, but showing up in more a helper stance. Of like, let me help you explore that. Would you be open to that?
Yeah. Once we've connected well, questions like that are in a very rich soil, I think, at that point, where they can tend to be received a lot better. And the challenge, as you've used that word here, that challenge can be received and actually digested. And I think there's kind of those two sides as well, of saying what do you see your responsibility is in this, and what is outside of your control. The other side of that is too, what is God's responsibility in this, or what is God saying to you about this, is another set of questions that we can approach that with. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah. Awesome. So let go and let God. Biblical principle, yes. Helpful sometimes. Replaced with exploration, being with, not just bumper stickering and running away.
Great.
Awesome. Thanks for exploring that, buddy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it. Excited to let go and let God.
Let's do this.
Hey folks, thanks for tuning in today. Our team is made up of myself, Chris Conlin, and Mark Wavle, and our lead editor is Derek Donley. We're a crowd-funded nonprofit. Our free resources exist because of your generous support. To learn more about us or to check out classes that we talk about here, visit us at www.humanproject.us. Thanks for joining us on our mission to bring 1 million lives closer to the fullness of God's design.